Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel here. In this episode, we're going to go through the top performers this week for fantasy football in the NFL. We're going to go through each position and we're going to give a little insight and an in-depth look at each player's performance. Guys, so we're going to start this off with the quarterbacks for this week. I'm going to go through the top two of each position, and it's kind of funny how this starts off. So for the number one quarterback this week for fantasy football, we got Drew Brees. Drew Brees, he threw the ball. He was 39 for 49, so he only incompleted 10 passes. That's pretty good for throwing 50 balls in a game. He had 396 yards, 3 touchdowns. He also had 3 rushes for 7 yards and 2 touchdowns. So my man had 5 touchdowns altogether. He racked up a total of 40.5 fantasy points. So that's a big game for him. The Saints did outdo the Falcons in overtime. And so now we're going to jump into the number 2 quarterback I have for this week, and that would be my man Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan went 26 for 35. He had 374 yards, 5 touchdowns. He also had 4 rushes for 12 yards. He ended up ending the game with 40.2 points. That's pretty good for 2 quarterbacks going head-to-head against each other to have almost 81 points apiece for fantasy. If you had either one of Matt Ryan or Drew Brees this week, you really lucked out. I hope you started them. I know earlier on in the season they may have not been doing as hot as they were in this game, and I don't think that this streak will continue of the 40 points for them going forward. Maybe Matt Ryan will have a couple more 40-plus games, so just be on the lookout and make sure you check out who they're playing beforehand and check out their defenses. So now we're going to jump into the running backs here, and for the number 1 running back this week, I got Alvin Kamara, who also played in that Saints-Falcons game. Kamara had 16 rushes for 66 yards. But here's the big thing, and we talked about this in our very first episode on the channel. When a running back gets a lot of receptions, how big of an impact it plays for their team and also for their fantasy. So Alvin Kamara had 15 receptions for 124 yards. That's huge for a running back. That's receiver numbers. He had good rushing and running numbers, and then it was basically like he was playing 2 positions. He had a total of 34 fantasy points this week, and he's the number 1 running back in fantasy football of week 3. We're going to go ahead and we did 3 running backs here on this because you can play up to 3 running backs. So, and the way I play, you can play. You have your RB1, your RB2, and your flex. So I went through 3 running backs here and also 3 wide receivers. So for our number 2 running back of the week, and I called this earlier in my predictions video, was Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley had 23 rushes for 105 yards. He had 1 touchdown. He also picked up 5 receptions for 51 yards with a total of 24.6 fantasy points. I think this was Todd Gurley's first big 100-yard game of the year. I think he's a 1,000-yard rusher, maybe a 1,500-yard rusher if he can get them. The offensive line can get going and they can all work together and get the ball downfield, and you can see what kind of damage Todd Gurley can do when he gets the ball. So we're going to go now to our number 3 running back for the week, and that is my boy Carlos Hyde for the Cleveland Browns. He had 23 rushes for 98 yards. He also had 2 touchdowns for he had 2 touchdowns, and then he had 2 receptions for 5 yards, which only is really going to get him 2.5 points if you're playing PPR. He had a total of 24.3 fantasy points, and this is all PPR format here. Big play out of Carlos Hyde this week. The Browns are looking actually very decent moving forward. I believe Baker Mayfield is going to start this upcoming weekend for week 4. So everybody, please just keep a lookout for the Browns. I think they have a couple more wins in them. I think finally their young guys are coming together and they're actually starting to form a team and play as a team. And I think they're going to win a few more games this year. So now we're going to jump in here to the wide receivers for the week. I have 3 wide receivers picked. I know I have a huge Falcons fan, but this is strictly, I'm not having any bias on this. This is strictly the top performers of the week. So we're going to jump into the number 1 wide receiver this week, which was on nobody's radar, and that's my boy Calvin Ridley. He had 7 receptions for 146 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a total of 40.5 points. This man was getting open. he was doing what he had to do. He had a couple really big plays, and they looked for him in the red zone a lot. So now we're going to jump over. We got Robert Woods coming in at the number 2 wide receiver for the week. Robert Woods had 10 receptions for 104 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had 33.7 fantasy points. He played a very well game. The Rams, Jared Goff was looking for him. He got himself open. He made plays. So now we're going to jump to one of my other favorite players, and that would be my boy Jordan Nelson for the Oakland Raiders. Jordy had 6 receptions, 173 yards, and 1 touchdown for a total of 29.3 fantasy points. Now listen, guys, I don't know if this streak's going to continue. I can't tell with the way the Raiders are playing right now, losing games. Their defense is not that great. Derek Carr's not playing that great, but Jordy Nelson's doing work. Get him the ball. He can make things happen. All right, guys, so now we're going to jump into the tight ends, the top 2 tight ends of the week. So far this year, tight ends haven't made a big impact. I mean, of course, you have your Rob Gronkowski and your Travis Kelce. They're going to make big impacts, but neither one of them are top 2 tight ends this week. Tight ends just haven't been scoring a lot of points. Now, Gronk, when he gets in a rhythm, Gronk will score a whole lot of points. So, you know, if you have Gronk, he's a safe start always, but these 2 tight ends, maybe in your waiver wire or in your free agents, you may be able to pick them up. So we're going to jump into it. My number 1 tight end of this week is Vance McDonald. He had 4 receptions, 112 yards, and 1 touchdown, and for a total of 21.2 fantasy points. Now, I did not watch the game that he played in, so I really don't have that much insight, but I know that he's a good weapon, and they can use him in a lot of different ways. So now we're going to jump into our second tight end, and it's Dallas Goedert. I don't really know how to pronounce his last name. He had 7 receptions for 73 yards and 1 touchdown for a total of 20.3 fantasy points. So he was just 1 point shy of Vance McDonald. He played an all right game. They were looking for him a lot. He found himself. He was making ways for himself to get open, and he was putting himself in positions to make some plays. So now we're going to jump into the defense and special teams. I just did the top 2 defense and special teams of this week. Were the Bills, who absolutely put it on Minnesota. They had 16 points in the fantasy. And the number 2 defense of this week would be the Chicago Bears, which, I mean, Khalil Mack's all I got to say. He's the whole defense. And on that note, guys, I'm not doing kickers. Kickers perform every week. They always do good. So, and anyway, this is going to be the end of this video. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, and if you would like to disagree with anybody I put on this list, feel free to put in the comments. I'd love to talk about it. Thank you guys again for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.